All right, well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover today. Know you're excited about our content. We are. As a reminder, everyone is on mute. We cannot see your video. This session is going to be recorded and it will be shared out as well as the deck. We're going to have a lot of fun today. So let's go ahead and get started. Joining us here for the March 2021 Phoenix San Diego Tableau user group. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We know you have a lot of choices when it comes to attending Tableau user group content nowadays, so we appreciate you spending the evening with us. As a reminder, all participants are muted. If you do have any questions specifically about the content or presentations, please use the Q&A panel at the bottom. If you want to chat, praise our speakers, or just in general, anything, go ahead and use the chat for anything else. As I mentioned, this session will be recorded. It will be made available on the Tableau YouTube channel. We'll go ahead and we'll get those links, though, posted in our respective communities if you want to watch the replay. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. We'll go through some announcements and updates as usual. Let's talk about what's new, what's coming in a new version of Tableau. If you're using a newer version of Tableau, you may or may not be aware of the new data source Bookshop. We're going to talk a little bit about that and why that's important. We'll dive into some tips and tricks. We'll take a quick break close to the top of the hour. And then it's all about Python. Python for humans who use Tableau and automating Tableau. I will plug also, if you're not already a part of the Tableau developer program, we'll paste some links into the chat. Please do sign up, whether you have any coding experience or not. You do want to join that group. It is free to join. There's no cost. The benefits are you will get your own Tableau online sandbox to play with. This will be the latest and greatest versions, whether you're using that at work or not. Give you kind of a leg up and start learning how to do some really cool things with development, whether it's extensions or writing some code, embedded analytics. But a lot of that stuff we're going to cover today in both our presentations from Ty and Tiffany. We'll post the link again, but if you do want to go out there, go to developer.tableau.com and check that out. Today, we're going to be giving away a couple of e-learning vouchers. So pay attention throughout the meeting. During the break, we'll have an opportunity for you to sign up for a chance to win those vouchers. The vouchers are awarded to a prospective winner. The winner will then receive a voucher. That voucher will be good for a one-year subscription to the Tableau e-learning platform. And we'll actually cover that in one of our slide announcements. All right, so for those of you that aren't aware, my name is Michael Perillo. I am a Tableau user group leader for Phoenix. Matt, introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Matt Shoemaker. I'm the user group leader here in San Diego. And I'm an independent consultant here in San Diego, focusing on data warehousing and data visualization.
Yeah, and when I first got started, Matt was one of the first people that helped me kind of ramp up the user group. It was back in 2013, so San Diego has been around quite a long time.
Yeah, I think 10 full years now.
Congratulations. What an accomplishment. All right. Well, again, glad to have all of you join us this evening. Let's get into some announcements. If you have any kids in your household or you know of anyone with kids, we encourage you all to go out to the Data for Kids program. This is a great way for you to get them excited about data, about using Tableau, data visualization. Little pro tip, not so secret also, this is a great way if you're just getting started with Tableau to make it enjoyable, bite-sized learning things that are fun with content and colors and things like that. So check this out. This is a really great way, again, to get kids engaged. And if they get a hold of this and start excelling, you can retire early, they can get the job, make the money, and it's a win-win for everyone. So visit that, Data Kids. As we mentioned, the Tableau eLearning, that's going to be a voucher that we're going to be giving away today. But for those of you that might be engaged or curious about what the eLearning platform is, they're essentially learning paths across a multitude of concentrations, whether you're a designer, a data scientist, maybe a community leader, or an executive sponsor in your organization. There's a learning opportunity for each and every one of you. Please check this out, elearning.tableau.com. Take a look, see what they have. If you are interested, you want to sign up, it's very inexpensive, roughly around $10 a month per user. So a lot of great content, help you get on the right track, e-learning program. We're very big on certification. And we want everyone here to at least consider and try their shot at certifying in Tableau. Tableau's got really two main focuses today on Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. I've got my certified associate in desktop, certified professional in server. Been certified since 2015 or so, and have kind of kept that up. So it's a great way to kind of keep your skills going and also to learn the product. So we mentioned the e-learning program before. This is a great way to really upskill and learn the program from end to end, whether you certify or not. If you go out to the certification website, you'll be able to download study guides and concepts that they want you to understand. It's a great learning tool. It's a roadmap for you to understand what concepts you should know to be successful. If you're just starting out with Tableau, definitely check out the Desktop Specialist exam. You could either start with that or go straight into the Certified Associate. The professional exams, they will require you to have the prerequisite of the Certified Associate in either case. So get certified and differentiate yourself. As we said, there's tons of events going on, user groups, webinars, demos, all that throughout. The best way to stay engaged with Tableau and what's going on is their events page. So go out to tableau.com/community/events for a list of all that Tableau has to offer. If you're not part of the Tableau community, please join. This is a great new platform that they've incorporated now that they're part of the Salesforce family. You'll have forums, knowledge base articles, our user group page, a lot of great access to content. You can sign up at community.tableau.com. So please engage today. The mentorship program. This is a program that's been spun up by Tableau enthusiasts, volunteers, just like you and me throughout. If you're wanting to learn more about Tableau and you'd like a mentor, go out to mentoringmeetup.com, sign up. There's a form to fill out on what concentrations, what areas, topics specifically you'd like to learn more about with Tableau, whether it's APIs or Python, what we're talking about today, server, desktop, advanced analytics, visualization. There's someone to be matched up with. If you're a data rock star and you want to give back, this is also a great place to be a mentor. Same place, sign up. You could be both a mentee and a mentor, but go ahead and do that if you can. We appreciate all your engagement. Tableau Talent Finder, another community spun up resource. If you know someone that's been impacted by COVID, looking for work, or you know someone hiring, this is a great place to go out and find or list availability on resourcing. The Tableau Talent Finder. go ahead and check that out. The link's there, all lowercase, bit.ly/Tableau Talent Finder. As part of the e-learning program, Tableau's recently released the Data Literacy for All program. This is a free foundational program that'll walk you through understanding data literacy pretty much end to end. Again, whether you're new to data visualization or Tableau or kind of seasoned, engage. And this is for everyone at all levels, whether you're the developer, the data scientist, or the executive sponsor. It is very critical now to have a foundational core of data literacy kind of in your skill belt there. So check this out. You can find more at tableau.com/learn/data-literacy. Again, it is a free e-learning program that you can sign up for and execute. And as a reminder, we've got multiple ways for you to engage with our Phoenix Tableau user group. We're on social media, on our community page, and also on Slack. So if you want to join our Slack channel, we've got the link there, bit.ly/PhoenixTugSlack. Put in your email address, sign up, and this is another way to kind of keep engaged with the core community as an alternative method of communication. All right, let's get started. Got a little bit to cover. So let's talk a little bit about what's new in Tableau. So in the chat, if you can, go ahead and put in what version of Tableau you're currently running. And we're going to give you a sneak peek. So Matt, if you could maybe copy down that URL, tableau.com/coming-soon, throw that in there. This is a place you want to look out for and understand what's coming with the next iteration of Tableau. This will always be the future iteration. So once this version, Tableau 2021.1 is released, the coming soon page will be replaced with content that will be in the subsequent release. So everything here that you're seeing will be incorporated in the next version of Tableau. If you are one of the lucky ones to have a Tableau online site that's already hooked up to the beta platform, you may already be starting to play with some of these concepts, some of these features. And we'll kind of dive into that just a little bit. But as you can see here, there's a breakdown of the different product categories that Tableau has and what's included. Big long list of new features. Some of them today, very excited about. If you attended the virtual conference, you've heard about Einstein Discovery, also kind of rebranded Tableau CRM. You're going to have a lot of that capability baked into the product. Einstein Dashboard Extensions. So this was one of the things that was showcased at the virtual Tableau conference. If you missed any of that and you want to circle back, you can always go to tc20.tableau.com. You can still register and experience some of the keynotes and some of the other content on demand. So recommend doing that. This is where you want to start off with, understanding what's new. As I kind of click through this, understanding what are Einstein table calcs, maybe what is Einstein dashboard extensions. It'll give me a little snippet of what's accessible or available in those features. Previously, if you wanted to experience these new versions, maybe some of you were engaged with the Tableau beta program or the alpha program. And that was accessible through pre-release.tableau.com. That program has now been, I guess, stalled, if you will. So if you were expecting to log in, for those of you that may be participating in the beta program, and expected to see the 2021.1 release, and you still saw the maybe 2020.4, you may have been wondering, what's been going on. Tableau, from what I've heard, has stalled the program. They will re-engage at a time in the future, rebranded, maybe newer technologies, newer capabilities to understand who's participating and accessibility to the software in general. But again, today, if you participated in that, there is nothing to download. There is no sneak peek of Tableau 2021.1. The only way really to get a hands-on kind of experience with that is to be part of kind of that online experience. And as I mentioned before, if you want to participate in Tableau online and you're not really looking to spend the money, the developer program is really that kind of gateway that'll get you there pretty quick. So again, developer.tableau.com. We definitely want you to learn more about kind of the developer opportunities, but that'll give you your own very own sandbox in the Tableau online space. As I mentioned, a lot of great things coming out, header and access improvements, the Einstein stuff I'm excited about, quick LODs. This was, again, one of the things that was really showcased at the Tableau conference, being able to create a level of details automatically based on what you're doing with data. Being able to write to Excel with Tableau Prep. So for those of you that might be on the licensing tier for user role-based licensing, this is another great thing. Late last year, they released the improvements to write to database. Now you'll be able to write to Excel in Tableau Prep. Tons of really cool stuff. So check it out. Again, tableau.com/coming soon. That'll get you a lot of information about what's coming within the next release. Get prepared, get informed. All right. So what's this Bookshop thing? Most of you hopefully know what the Sample Superstore is. Sample Superstore is the kind of the default or de facto data source that comes with your Tableau install. Bookshop is a newer data source that's accessible. Now, Bookshop was actually released back in version 2020.2, and this was to help showcase the relationship feature in data modeling. So we're going to flip over to the website and understand where you can get your hands on Bookshop data. As long as you're using a version 2020.2 that incorporates relationships, this is going to be beneficial to you. And we'll talk briefly about what is relationships and how those differ from your standard joins. But if you go out to the link there, we'll have that all in the chat. It's in the slide deck again. Everyone's going to get a copy. This is out there. You can download the Bookshop data, the core files, raw data, whether they're Excel, a packaged data source, all that. It's got some great information. And it kind of gives you the ERD kind of diagram on how the connected tables, or in this case, files, are connected. And really, when you data model, this is kind of the many-to-many relationships that you might encounter. And traditionally, doing something like this in Tableau or Tableau Prep without relationships, could be a little bit challenging based on the types of joints. So let's kind of quickly jump over to Tableau, and I've got a copy of Bookshop open. Let me zoom in here a little bit, and then we'll kind of define what this is. So if you're using a newer version of Tableau 2020.2 or higher, you may already be familiar with this relationship, aka noodles. And what these are not necessarily joins, but relationships as they relate to one table and or another. So let's be clear, these are not necessarily joins. They're not, artificially creating a right join, a left join, or anything, but they're relationships. And Tableau does a really good job of kind of letting you understand, what is the relationship between one object and another. Now, you will notice that over here on the book, you have maybe a little bit different indicator. You got kind of the traditional join cue, the visual cue right here, icons. Now, what this is an actual traditional join underneath. So we want to actually take a look at the physical tables that's underneath this. And for those of you that are using the newer version of Tableau that support relationships, maybe when you open up Tableau with this new capability, you see something that looks like this. And underneath, there's all your original joins. So the way that you get to your joins is by double clicking on that object. And that'll take you into, this physical layer. Now you have your traditional joins where we've pulled in maybe the book table and we've connected that to the info table. And now we have our standard join types, inner, left, right, outer, those types of things. Now to get back out, sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's a little hard to see, but there is a little X up in the upper right-hand corner. Click that and that'll get you back out. So now we're, again, back into this relationship view. And then we could see here, again, a very similar icon that we can double click on and enter this. And this is going to give us more indicators of we are now in a physical layer that was a union. So again, Tableau does a really good job of kind of showcasing, hey, we've got a traditional join here, we've got the traditional union here, and then we've got all our relationships, noodles connected to one another. So take a look at Bookshop. If you don't have access to a 2020.2 or higher version, definitely then go out and get Tableau Public. For those of you that aren't aware, Tableau Public is a free version of Tableau that'll let you connect to flat files like Excel, all for free. So it's the same bells and whistles essentially that you're going to use in the same product. So every one of you will have access to the latest and greatest version of Tableau if you so choose. So how do you get Tableau Public? Just go out to tableau.com/public, sign up, create your profile, download the software, install it on your personal computer, and you'll be good to go. So you always play with the latest and greatest features. You don't have to be restricted by what your organization has to offer. All right, so again, Bookshop data, that's out there. Please go out, play with it, wrap your heads around relationships. It's definitely not something we're gonna cover in a few minutes, but all the information's out here. All right, what else do we got? As I mentioned, Tableau Public. For those of you just starting out, if you're not already engaged with one or more of these activities, please do so. You'll have the links again in the slide when we get these sent out. But your Makeover Mondays, this is going to really help skill build your creative side. Workout Wednesdays, this is going to really upskill your technical aptitude on developing skills and techniques and hacks in Tableau. Iron Quest is a skill builder for potentially entering and winning Iron Viz. We've got other platforms, Viz for Social Good, Sports Viz Sunday, Project Health Viz, and there's so many more to list here. There's a ton of community activities and engagement all throughout the Tableau community for you to engage, and great at this. Share what you've got, get some feedback. Well, that's that. All right, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's see what you got with tips and tricks.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about some processes that I use that are not specific to Tableau, but are very helpful, and something that I use all the time and increasingly, in fact, particularly for a new project that I've been working on for the last few months. And that is a place to consolidate information and how to build a knowledge base around new data sets or a new knowledge domain, in fact. So I'm working with affiliate marketing data for a company, and they have a lot of data providers. So the affiliate marketing data providers are Commission Junction and Rakuten and some others. Let me just check the chat, make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, looks like we're good. Yeah, so what I found was that I was doing a lot of research on the web, going to and actually logging into all these sites separately. So I have to log in to Commission Junction, Rakuten, eBay, WebGains, Partnerize, and a bunch of others. And they all use different terminology. They all have different statuses. They all have different report types. They all have different ways of accessing data via APIs and SFTP and email drops and all of this stuff. So part of the project is helping the client understand exactly how to access this and what are the options. So what I've been doing is actually, I just have a PowerPoint presentation, and I started with the initial emails from the project, and I just dropped them in here, just cut and paste. So I'm using the snipping tool here, and I'm just going to my email and just grabbing a little snip just like that. And then I just drop it in here. And as I go from websites to Slack conversations to Tableau, all of this information that's relevant is fragmented in all of these different places. And even though things like Slack are designed to bring everything together, it's not necessarily the place where I want to drop every single question I have or every little action item, every meeting agenda and things like that. So I have my own little presentation PowerPoint slide deck here that I use for that. And it really helps for reducing the switching and the thrashing between applications and tabs and bookmarks and all of that stuff. So I've got everything in one place here. As I mentioned, it really helps with communicating with your team and with your client. If there's a training aspect, this is something that you can use to train. And it's also a nice thing to be able to hand off at the end of the project that says, hey, here's all our knowledge base in one place. And hopefully it's as helpful to them as it is for me. So again, meeting agendas, meeting goals, to-do lists, action items. I'll just put a little asterisk here if it's an action item for me. Any questions I have, diagrams here, you can see some basic diagrams of some systems. And then I use a giant slide like this with just a title. So if I want to go to Rakuten, I can find that. If I want to go to Pepper Jam, I can easily find that. eBay, affiliate window, whatever. This is also searchable. So if I want to go to eBay, I can just search for eBay. If there's any kind of little tags or keywords that I want to use and just drop in here to get me to a certain spot as a bookmark, I can easily do that. So that's just a little thing that helps. It might be a little bit more relevant since I'm an independent consultant. And I don't not necessarily integrating this with the client's project tracking tools, but you can certainly use it to supplement other project tracking tools. So along those lines, I've got all these new data sources, some of which I'm familiar with, some of which I'm not. So when I go over to Tableau, I know that this initial step of profiling the data and understanding the data, I know roughly what this looks like. So typically what I'll do is go here, and you can see I got a lot of data sources again, because it's a lot of reports coming from a lot of different places. And I would come out here and I would just say, okay, I need to profile. I want to understand things like statuses and types and potentially IDs and dates and things like that. And I'll start dragging things out and seeing what are the distinct combinations of these kind of things. And that was okay, but it really starts to disrupt your flow when you do that. And then you want to make adjustments, like I want to rename things over here. I may want to change data types, change default formatting, things like that. So what I've done lately is I'll just spend a little bit more time in here. So I've got my data source connected, And I'll just review these. So here's an ID for advertiser ID. I expect it to be an integer. Typically IDs are integer, so that makes sense. But here's another ID. Here's an order ID. It's a calculation because I anonymized it, but this is normally the kind of string it provides. And this kind of order ID is not an integer, it's a string, so that's interesting. And I'm, just maybe make a note of that in my on a little notepad or something, or I could put that, if I'm going to come back to it, I might put it in my PowerPoint to-do list. And I'm also going to look at dates. So I expect dates to be date types. Sometimes you'll see dates that have midnight in here, and they'll be date time data types. So that's a really easy thing to spot up front here. And I can just change that here to a date type, from a date and time to a date. So again, those are things you can do while you're building out visualizations here. But this way I can get to them up front and I don't have to do it on the fly, especially with so many data sources. It's a lot of little interruptions here and there to adjust those things on the fly after you've dragged them onto your screen, for instance. So here's another example. Here's currency. Now, one thing that you cannot do, which would be a really nice to have, would be able to change the default data format here to a currency, because I know that should be a currency there. You can't currently do that. You can change the data type. You can create groups and bins. You can rename either here or just double click, which is nice. And another nice thing that you can do, which I'm using increasingly, is you can look at the domain. So this is an amount column, and I can immediately see there are negative amounts in here. So I don't have to go over to a view and drag out the min and drag out the max to try to see what the variable range is there, or to look at all the distinct values. I've got an idea here. This is something to note that I may want to look at and say, okay, well, why are there negative? More than likely there are returns in this data or something like that, or adjustments of some sort. But that's something that you can do very quickly here, ahead of the fact. Again, make notes about what you want to follow up on based on your findings here. Another thing that you can do in here is create calculations. So I know that one of the first things that I want to look at is how many transactions per order, because that's the number of items in the order. So I can just right here create a little LOD calc to count the transaction IDs. And that's interesting. Okay, never run into that before. So yeah, it looks like it can't calculate it because you have to be in the viz itself, because it relies on the dimensions in the viz, which are defined by the blue pills on the rows, columns, and detail. So I haven't done an LOD calc in here yet, but you get the idea. You can do any kind of calc in here ahead of time, and it'll be ready to go when you switch over. So those are some of the things that I do, just reviewing the data types, looking at those ID fields, looking at dates, making sure things make sense. You can also look at the domain for dates and see if there are perhaps some outliers, that might be in either the future or way in the past or something like that.
Question.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have Tableau Prep?
I do, and I do use Tableau Prep to profile data. For bigger data sets, it has not been efficient. For one thing, as you know, if you have big data, it samples the data. So if you really want to understand the domain and all the distinct values, then you have to load in all the data and not just a sample of the data. And with the size of data sets that I've been working with, it proved to be prohibitive. But I do use Tableau Prep for data profiling quite a bit.
All right, that makes sense. Thanks.
Sure. So yeah, this is another case where I might just grab a snip of that. So that domain that looks interesting here, I'm just going to grab a quick screenshot of that and drop that into my PowerPoint, and then I'll come back to it later. So there may be 5 or 6 things that you find in here while just quickly profiling the data that you want to follow up on. And the nice thing about this view is that you can actually see samples of the data. This is only 1,000 rows, but it's better than just starting over here with a blank sheet where you don't have any idea what the actual data is, even though you have the field names. Here you get that extra benefit. So if you are working in here and you want to get an idea of the bigger data set, you can use this little view data over here, which will show you a sample of the data from the entire table. In this case, 10,000, and it's configurable. So if you want to do 15,000, you could do that, 20,000, whatever. And again, if you just want to look at some sample data from the entire table at once, all next to each other, these are also sortable. So that could help if you want to understand some groupings and things, then that's an option there. Another time saver that I've used recently, especially when I have a lot of fields up here. So you can see here, we've got action name, it's all in caps. So I want to just quickly update these. So you can go over here and use standard keyboard commands. So I'm just using the arrow keys. You can use F2 to rename, which is a standard renaming shortcut key. You can actually go from the top to the bottom here. So if you're way up at the top of the dimensions and you want to go down to the measures or go down to one of the later dimensions, you can easily do that as well. So that kind of keeps your hands on the keyboard, so you can just do 5 or 10 things at once. You don't have to go back to the mouse all the time. Another shortcut that I've been using, I think for the longest time, whenever I wanted to copy one of these values. So here's a transaction ID that I want to copy. And here you can see we have our fixed calculations working, our LOD calcs working, 22 transactions in this order. I would go here, oops, just filtered that, and click on here, and then I might click here and copy that. So to save a couple of mouse clicks there, you can right click and just say edit alias and then just Control C. So much quicker to just grab a quick value there. Edit alias will bring you this dialog, and then you can just Control C there. And now you've captured the value really quickly. You can go drop that somewhere. Another thing that I'm using increasingly, I won't get into too much example on here because it takes time. But if you're going to be using extracts, you can add filters to your extracts, which can be an enormous time saver with big data. So if you have a 10-year data set and you want to just look at 1 month so that you can get the lay of the land, or maybe a full year or 2 years, just add a quick date filter up here and then limit your date to that range. And you have the same, this is going to be a continuous measure. So you got your relative dates and then your discrete dates as well. So you've got all the control of that. And then that'll create a much smaller extract, much faster, and you can save a lot of time there. One thing when just looking at the some of the notes, just expanding on how I take notes, I've just added a caption here. So if you go to Worksheet, Show Caption, it appears at the bottom. And this is just a place you can double click in here and you can just add notes. So I started by I was looking at the order IDs and I just said, okay, well, when I scroll down here, I can see there's multiple formats for these order IDs depending on the type of transaction it is. So I might note that for browser adjustments, it has the period in here that those browser adjustments apply to. So these are for August. And that might be something that I want to parse out later. So I just paste that in here. And then that might eventually migrate over to my PowerPoint. For more extensive note taking, I would just create a dashboard with a text object and just drop as much stuff as I want in here. And then that might be something I can just reference. So this was like, how did they handle returns for eBay? And also in October 2019, they changed the way that they reported the data. This is not for eBay, but they changed the way they reported the data. So I put in the business rules there, and to understand when I have to flip a sign from negative to positive, or all these little things that might come up. And it's just one click away there. Another nice thing is you can just drop a web page into a dashboard. So if I want to log on to Commission Junction and access their UI, I might want to just spot check some data values that stream through the ETL process into the data warehouse. I can just do that right there. And again, just keep my focus narrow on the Tableau application here, not have to switch over to a website constantly, and that constant thrashing back and forth between applications and tabs and trying to find tabs that you had open and things like that. Another time saver, you can pause updates. I think a lot of people know this, and this is one that I've known forever, but when it comes down to it, sometimes I just don't use it. And you can pause updates here. And I think sometimes I get used to the 5 to 10 second load times when I'm just dragging and dropping things. But they start to add up. And when you're working with bigger data sets, waiting 5, 10, 20 seconds for something to load for a crosstab, only to find that it really wasn't exactly what you were looking for, those can add up. And also they disrupt your workflow while you have to wait 15 seconds for something to update. So you can pause your updates there, drag out everything that you want to on the screen, and then you can hit F9 if you want to run a manual update, or you can click this to manually update the screen, or you can resume the auto updates where the screen will update every single time you drag something. But that's a nice thing that you can do. And what I have done, because I always forget to do this, I cut the corner of a Post-it note, just a tiny little square, and I dropped it right here. And it's on my screen, on my monitor right now, so that whenever I'm dragging stuff up, I have a little reminder, hey, do I want to do this one thing, or do I want to pause? Maybe I want to select 4 things and drop them all out at the same time, which you can do. I won't do it now because I don't want to expose the client data, but you can drag multiple items out here at once, and then click resume or click manual update, and then everything will be updated, and only one query will be sent to the database, and only one refresh will happen. You can also drop filters. So if you want to reduce the time it takes and reduce the data returned, you can do that ahead of time rather than drop everything out and then add a filter after the fact. You can also do multiple default property formatting. So if I right click on these 2 measures down here, I could set those both to currency. Doesn't really make sense for the number of transactions, but you can do that and then manual refresh. And yeah, so I've changed that to currency. So the last one is, if you have a big data set, you can just create an empty sheet and click on that before you close Tableau. And that way, when you open up your workbook, it'll be on an empty sheet. It won't load anything, and you don't have to worry about that you're loading up whatever the last worksheet you happen to have open, which may take a little bit of time to load depending on what your data set is. So those are some things that I use to help save time, and they've really paid off lately. Oh, the web page, Stephen, I see your question in there. So you can just go create a new dashboard and just drag a web page object out here and put the URL in there, and it'll be. I don't know if it's necessarily a fully functioning web page. I'm not sure if there are any limitations in here, but for basic functionality, I've been able to use this well. I do use Tableau Server to publish sometimes, and I have used the empty extract hack, where you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that based on a user filter or a relative date?
There's a few different ways to do that. Yeah, I use a method that's just basically a true or false Boolean value. Yes or no. Do you want an empty extract? Yes or no. And you apply that to the data source filter. And this way you're just essentially, I don't want to say tricking Tableau, but you are.
Yeah, and I know there are some great forum entries on that if anyone wants to follow up on that. But you can basically save a lot of time by publishing empty, and then you can set it to refresh. I think it's something. The hack that I used was based on whether the system date was the current date or something like that.
Yeah, that was a little more thought and manual intervention. The method I use is just a parameter. Once you publish, you flip it to no. No, I don't want an empty extract. Once it's published there, refresh the data source or put it on a schedule, and the next time it runs, it'll allow the data. Much easier, I think.
Yeah, that'll be a good tip to show in a future meeting. There's a question about, I have 2 Tableau extracts, but I'm unable to cross tab these. Any way to do this? So if you're referring to joining them, I believe you can join them in Tableau Prep now. Can you join 2 extracts in a regular data source?
No, not in Tableau Desktop, Tableau Prep, like you said.
Well, or yeah, certainly not published data sources, but you could.
Even the extracts would be a join.
Yeah.
Like 2
right.
hyperfiles.
Yeah, exactly. You can create a join here and then extract them both. So if you have, if you don't start with 2 extracts, then you can easily do that. And now you have the ability to create a single table versus a multi-table extract. And a multi-table extract should generally be better performing. Great. Any other questions? We'll take a little break. Michael, you want to introduce the e-learning spreadsheet and then, or Google Sheet, and then we'll have Ty get started.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Depending on where you're at, you should be able to see everything. When we come back, we are going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the e-learning voucher drawing. So I'll paste this link into the chat. But like I said, take a 5-minute break, kind of come back at about top of the hour or so, and we'll get started with the next presentation. All right, we're going to get started in a minute or so. So before we jump into our next presentation, again, as a reminder, we are going to be doing a couple e-learning voucher giveaways. So please sign up. Go to the link there. I put that in the chat already. I will go ahead and post it into the chat one more time so you don't have to scroll. E-learning voucher. There you go. All right. All right, so you have that in the chat. Let's learn more about our next presenter. Tiffany, are you on the line? Are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I think Ty's going next.
Yeah, Ty was going first, right?
I messed that up. Ty, I'm sorry. So you're all going to have to wait for Tiffany. You're
going to want to hear what Ty says first.
There you go.
If you
Ty, are you at least with
Python, it's going to make a lot more sense when Tiffany.
I am not Tiffany.
All right, so let's get back to Ty. There we go. All right.
My hair was much shorter in that picture.
Yeah. So, Ty, I guess you're a self-taught programmer of 10 years. You got a wide range of interests and skills in programming. And you're a data engineer at Carvana, using, from what I understand now, quite a number of languages. And you've been using Tableau for the last 4 years or so?
Yeah, that's about right.
All right. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, and we'll get started.
Awesome. All right. Everybody see the screen?
We see it.
Looks good.
Awesome. Cool. So as I was introduced, my name's Ty. I'm a data engineer at Carvana. And I'm going to be showing you guys how to automate things in Tableau using Python. And I want to make sure that this is intended to be a presentation, just kind of demoing how relatively easy it is to do some really powerful stuff in Tableau, right? In Python, especially for data people like us. And Tiffany's going to do the cool stuff and show you how to actually integrate things with Tableau, how to use Tableau Server Client, or you can publish extracts with it. Tableau also has a couple of other Python packages for creating local extracts and then publishing them, which can be useful in certain cases. But what I'm going to do is kind of give you an intro to Python, an intro to using Python as a data professional, and that'll kind of segue into Tiffany's presentation on integrating with Tableau directly. So kind of the whole, the 10,000-foot view of our presentation together is going to be kind of, I'm going to show how you can read and write data from various sources to various destinations. And then at the end of it all, we're going to be able to trigger an extract refresh on Tableau server with Python. So if there's any case where we don't know exactly when the data is going to be there, we don't have to try to schedule the extract refresh on Tableau server for every hour, just checking randomly to see if the data is there. We'll trigger the extract refresh exactly when the data is there. So let's get started. So the TLDR of this is we're gonna use Anaconda, which Anaconda is a bundle of things that includes Python. It includes a wonderful IDE, which is just fancy text editor for programming languages. It's called Spider. And it includes a bunch of data-driven packages. And we're going to talk about all that a little later. We're going to be reading and writing some data. We're going to be iterating through things. And then I'm going to show you how to install additional packages like Tableau Server Client, which will kind of segue into Tiffany's presentation. So why Python? I saw somebody in the chat say something about, people are changing over from Python to SQL or something similar to that for ETL type things. The coolest thing about Python though is it's so flexible. You can do it's kind of vague to say this, but you can do anything in Python. Like you can read from basically any data source. If you're doing data stuff, you can develop games in it. You can do machine learning. You can build web apps and APIs with it. There's people who use it for robotics. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with Python. So it's significantly more flexible than SQL. It is a legitimate programming language. It's also very easy to learn. I like to say that it's highly Googleable. If you want to know how to do anything in Python and you know what you want to do in English, you know the logic, if you Google it and just put Python at the end of it, you'll probably find the answer in the first two results. There's free tutorials literally everywhere on the internet. It's the language itself is very English. It's easy to read. And I like to say no BS, just logic. There's no setup. There's no setup files that you have to have. Like if you're doing something like C#, you can literally write like 2 or 3 lines of code and do something really cool. It's extremely widely used. I checked Glassdoor the other day, and there's more than 80,000 Python jobs in the US hiring right now on Glassdoor. So a lot of people use it. And the coolest thing is that it's extensible. There's about 250,000 community-created packages available on PyPy, which is the Python package index. And one of those packages is Tableau Server Client. There's a few others that Tableau's created. There's a bunch of other community-created packages that are useful for data things. And yeah, they're all really awesome. So Anaconda, so there's a bunch of links in this deck. We'll send out the deck so that you guys can follow through if you want to get Anaconda installed and Spider and all this stuff set up. So Anaconda includes, like I said, Python 3, includes Spider, which I'll show you. It's really, really cool. An Anaconda prompt, which is just a little black box terminal that you'll use to install packages when you need to. But it already includes tons of packages like Pandas, scikit-learn, requests, and we'll talk about some of those a little later too. Go to the next one. So I'm going to show you Spider right now. So Spider uses an interactive Python console, which means that you can do things like this. If my keyboard works, look at that, my keyboard's not working. There we go. Do things like this and run a single line of code. And if you come over here to the variable explorer, you can see the result of all the variables that you've stored. So if I want to say y equals x plus 2, I can see the value of y here. I only had to run this line of code to initialize y and to assign it a value because the variable x is already stored in memory. So This is extremely useful, especially in cases where instead of it being x equals 2, let's say this is a query that takes 30 minutes to run. And you run this line and you get your data, and then you run this line and it doesn't work for some reason, there's an error or something like that. You don't have to run this line again because the data from the query is stored in memory. So you can just fix up this line of code, just run only this line. Saves you a lot of time. It's really useful for debugging and for data uses in general. If I do something like this, I'm just going to get a list of files in a certain directory I've got over here. Let me make sure I import glob also. So you can see more complex variables like lists and data frames, which we'll talk about in a second. In Spider over here in the variable explorer, if you just double click, you can see every element of the list. You can come in here and copy paste it if you need to. So it's really easy to have visibility over the data that you're working with. And like it's super simple to do things like get the list of all the files in a specific folder. You can do it in one line of code. Let me get back to here. So I like using Spider for data-driven stuff in Python. There's a bunch of other IDEs that people use. VS Code is an excellent editor for many languages. It's very heavily used for developers like JavaScript and TypeScript and stuff like that. Jupyter Notebooks is similar to Spider, but it's usually used in cloud environments. It's a web-based editor. And then PyCharm is heavily used by people who develop in Python, but it's typically for like software development. For data people like us, we just want something clean that we can, in a couple lines of code, read and write some data. And PyCharm is a little overkill for that. So Pandas, I mentioned data frames. Pandas is a package in Python that kind of unlocks the power of data frames. Data frames are just tables, just like an SQL table or an Excel table or something like that. It's got rows and columns. You can get more complex. It can be multi-dimensional. But in general, especially for Tableau, you probably just want two-dimensional tables. So Pandas is where the real power comes in with reading and writing data. So Pandas can read from tons of different formats, CSV, Excel, JSON, HTML. It can read Parquet if you're using cloud-based stuff. Parquet is pretty popular in like with AWS and Athena. There's tons of different file formats you can read. You can also read in data from something else entirely, like an API, and then kind of convert it into a Pandas data frame. So it's super flexible. And as you can see here, reading a single CSV into a data frame only takes 2 lines of code, and I can show you right now what it looks like when I do that. So I'm going to clear my environment here to get rid of these variables because we don't care about them anymore. I'm going to import pandas as PD. So this just makes it to where when I reference pandas functions in the future, I don't have to type pandas. I can just type PD. It's an alias, just like an SQL. So if I want, I've got a file over here that is just real estate data I found on the internet. I think it's for Sacramento or something. But so let's say I want to create a data frame that is read the CSV that is called real estate. I just run these 2 lines of code because I need to import pandas. So first of all, it runs very, very quickly. I mean, you can read easily like 1 million records, and it'll take just a couple seconds to read. So I've got this data frame over here now, and I can kind of inspect the data. It automatically highlights like numeric fields, so you can kind of visually see lower and higher numbers. The other cool thing about pandas is that you can very easily then do things like filtering. So let's say I want to filter for houses that are greater than 3,000 square feet. So you can see down here when I just ran this, it prints the output in the console over here because I didn't assign it to any variable. I didn't have an equal sign or anything like that. So if I want to make make a new data frame called big houses. I can just do this and just run that. And now I've got a data frame of only houses that are more than 3,000 square feet. So it's super easy to just read data, manipulate data in Python, especially using pandas. So in 3 lines of code here, we've read a CSV and we've filtered it down to houses that are 3,000 square feet or more. So that little, I have a little note in here about the little R before the quotes here. That just says that this is a what's called a regex string, which makes backslash. So backslashes in programming are usually indicate that this is a special character. So like \t actually is a tab, or \n is a new line. So putting the R before the quotes just makes sure that this is a literal backslash, which is really useful for file paths, because when you copy paste file paths in Windows, at least it uses backslashes by default. So putting that R there kind of will take care of those types of problems. So if you want to read in a bunch of files, so like say you've got like an FTP where a third party is sending you a bunch of files, or maybe they're sending you a file every day or every hour or something like that, and you want to read them all into a single data frame and put that somewhere, you're going to want to iterate through all the files in that folder, which we did earlier with glob. So glob is a package for Python that you can use for reading, for like iterating through directories and all kinds of file and directory kind of stuff. So actually, I've got the code here. Oops. Which is, I'm not gonna be able to copy paste because I have it in present mode, but here. So I'm gonna just show you what it looks like when you read in. So I've got a folder here, I'll show you. I've got this folder tug, and inside I have a folder called cities, and there's a ton of CSVs in here that I want to merge them all together. I want to union them all together, create a single data frame so that I can write it out to a table or do whatever I want to need to do with it. So instead of this, I'm going to have it looking cities, and this little star just is a wildcard. So it's looking for anything in this folder that has a file extension of CSV, basically. So I want to do I want to read CSV for each file name in this list of file names here. I want to read the CSV into a data frame. And then that's going to give me a list of data frames. So it's going to have one data frame for each CSV. And then I want to, there's a function in Pandas called concat that takes a list of data frames and unions them all into a single data frame. So I can do, let's just call this, so DS. Variable names can be whatever you want them to be. So here you can see we've got all those files, and it's super fast. We got all these files here in a single data frame. So what I did there, by the way, this notation here with the square brackets and like the item for each thing in the list. That's called a list comprehension. It's something specific in Python. You can use loops if you're more familiar with loops in other programming languages. It's the same kind of thing, but it's just a shorthand, so you can do it in one line. Python has a lot of shorthand and things like that, which is really cool. So now that we have all these data frames in Python, we want to put them somewhere so that we can ultimately access them from Tableau. So Pandas also makes it very easy to write out data. For example, here you can see that writing to CSV is just one line of code where you just give the name of the CSV that you want to write to, given the data frame that you want to write. There's a few parameters that you can pass along with it. I usually use index equals false because by default, data frames have a column that's unnamed that just has the row number, which you typically don't need in your data set. And then I make sure that if I'm writing to CSV, I quote my CSV. You should quote every field in a CSV so that if you have delimiters in your data, it doesn't screw up where your data is, like which column it's attributed to. So always quote your CSVs and never save them in Excel. CSVs and Excel do not get along very well. Excel does terrible things to CSVs. Don't do it, but always quote your CSV. So, writing out to files is relatively easy. Writing to databases is pretty easy too. The only kind of hang up is the connection string. So once you've figured out what the connection string is for your database, which this package called SQL Alchemy that you can use for creating connection strings, and Pandas uses for connecting directly to databases. There's documentation on what your connection string should be based on what type of database you're using, what your authentication is set up to be. At Carvana, we use Microsoft SQL Server, and we use like our Windows authentication, so we don't have to pass authentication directly into the connection string, which is nice. But yours might be a little bit different. So at a high level, you would use SQL Alchemy to create an engine based on your connection string, and then you would use Pandas to write the database to a table in your database. You pass in the table name, the engine, the schema name. If you're using MS SQL Server, then DBO is the default schema. Same index equals false. If you have that unnamed column with row name or row numbers, you probably don't want that. And then there's an if exists parameter also, where you can either append to the table or you can replace it. So the options are append, replace, or fail. So if the table exists, then Python will just return an error. So you can insert the records into the table that's with append, or you can completely replace the table, which is like a truncate or like dropping and reinstating the table. So yeah, that's kind of the introduction to data things in Python. So ultimately, you don't need to be able to read in data from Pandas or write anything with Pandas in order to automate Tableau, but it helps to kind of do them at the same time so that you can trigger extract refreshes immediately after reading and writing data, etc. It helps to have all that coordinated in one place. And you can put it all in one script, so it's guaranteed that your extract will refresh at the correct time. So the last thing I'm going to show you before we hand it over to Tiffany is installing packages. Like packages like Pandas and Glob and SQL Alchemy come pre-installed. Like Pandas and SQL Alchemy come with Anaconda. That's part of why Anaconda is good for us data people, because it comes with all that stuff already pre-installed. It doesn't come with Tableau Server Client, however, but installing packages is super easy. When you download Anaconda, one of the things that you're going to get is Anaconda prompt, which is just a little black box like this. And to install a package, you can just use pip install client, and it's usually pretty quick. Probably won't be because this is live. So now I have Tableau Server Client installed, and I can now just, like any other package, just import it. Here, it's actually already coming up in the autocomplete. And we can make sure that works, and it does. It would give me an error here if the package didn't exist. Like if I try to import some package that exists, it would tell me that that package doesn't exist. So Tableau Server Client is there, and I know that was a lot of information, but I hope this kind of shows how relatively easy it is to do some powerful stuff in Python with data. You can do some basic reading and writing. You don't need to be an expert programmer to do powerful things in Python, especially. And doing the extract refreshes with Tableau Server Client is just one of the things that you can do with Tableau Server Client. There's tons of other stuff you can do. The Tableau Hyper API is also an excellent package from Tableau that lets you create hyper extracts locally And you can use that in conjunction with Tableau Server Client to create local extracts and then publish them, and then refresh the extracts for certain dashboards. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. I think that is, yeah, so at the end of this deck, I've got a link or a list of a bunch of links for resources, instructions for installing Anaconda and Pandas, documentation, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or need some help with your use case. I'm here. So
we have a couple questions maybe you can answer. In the chat, we had a question earlier, what is a really good resource for learning Python? I guess the top link that you have there might kind of address that, but do you have any other maybe resources, tips for those that want to learn?
So the top link that I have here is literally google.com.
Google, awesome. So
I find I find that personally, if you go into learning a programming language just saying I'm going to learn Python today, it's probably not going to stick. The way to really learn a language is to understand what problem you're trying to solve in English first and logic it out. Be like, this needs to happen, then this needs to happen, then this needs to happen, and then kind of Google those pieces with the word Python afterwards. Like understanding the logic of programming is the biggest part of it. All Python is just syntax to logic, and syntax is Googleable. So I personally, I'm self-taught. I learned by just Googling everything, just figuring out what I needed to do in English first, and then just Googling it. There are excellent tutorials all over the internet, but in general, they're going to tell you how to use Python as a language, from a basic standpoint, but getting it to do powerful stuff like we did today only takes a couple lines of code, and you're probably not, if you're doing a Python 101 tutorial, they're just going to tell you how to do x = 2 and print things, which is great, but it's a lot more fun to do stuff like this.
Absolutely. Another question we had for the SQL Alchemy, is it common for any relational DB like MS SQL, MySQL, or Postgres?
Yeah, so that's actually the cool thing about SQL Alchemy is that it's a package that allows you to connect to tons of different database types. I've used it in the past for MS SQL Server. I've used it for Teradata. I've used it for Oracle. I've used it for IBM DB2. So throwback.
Do you need separate drivers, or does it install the drivers as well?
You do need the drivers installed, and that's part of the connection string is the path to the driver. So I can include some of those resources in my resources slide here for downloading some of those drivers. There's really good websites for figuring out based on what you have, what you need to download and install.
Okay. I know for R, there's something called Swirl, which is like a built-in tutorial, which is really cool. It's like a tutorial package that walks you through R in a really nice way. Is there something that you know of for Pandas that's like that, just a package? It's tutorial based?
I don't know of anything specifically like that, but I'm sure the Pandas is like the de facto standard for any data stuff in Python, especially data science. So I'm sure there's tons of interactive tutorials online. I can put some of those in the resources links too. But yeah, I don't think there's any built-in tutorial stuff like that in Python like that.
Got it. Furman asked about a file type called FASTA, F-A-S-T-A. Are you familiar with that one, and do you know if Python supports it?
I am not familiar with that. Is it related to Teradata? I know Teradata has like fast load stuff, which I've worked with briefly.
Okay.
But I haven't worked with fast data.
Furman, you may have to just Google that one and see if you can come across anything. And Eric Ramos asked, do you use virtual environment as a best practice for running Python?
So yeah, I do have you know, I've got everything installed on my local machine, and I do all my testing and stuff on here. And then for actually scheduling jobs, Tiffany's going to get into it a little bit, but I do use a VM for scheduling Python, and you just want to make sure that like the environment that you have on your local machine and on your VM is the same, because there's a bunch of different versions of Python and stuff like that. You should definitely use Python 3 at least. Don't use Python 2. We're not in 2008 anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to using Anaconda can help with that too. You can run multiple environments in Anaconda very easily. Actually created a separate environment just for this presentation today. It took me like 2 seconds. So running a bunch of different environments and stuff like that is pretty easy in Anaconda. And yeah, I would recommend using a VM if you're scheduling stuff.
Fantastic, awesome, thanks. That's a great resource, a great presentation, Ty, for people that are getting started.
Thank you so much.
Super helpful. Thank you.
All right, Tiffany, you're up. Yeah, so self-proclaimed data nerd, right? In Tableau, SQL, Python, last 3 years.
Yeah. So I actually don't have a formal education in data. My degree is in psychology. I kind of landed myself in a data entry role and just sort of got really interested in data and have worked my way up from there. So I'm also self-taught. Haven't been programming for 10 years, but I've been using Tableau and Python for the last 3-ish years, and definitely nerd out about this stuff. So super excited to be here with you guys today. This is the first time I've done a presentation with Tableau. Hopefully it won't be the last. Let me share my screen here. Okay, awesome. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. So yeah, I feel like I was set up for success from all of you guys. You guys really talked about my presentation, so hopefully I meet expectations. So we're going to talk today about how to automate Tableau with Python. So I don't know how many of you guys have had this issue, but one of the things that introduced me to using Tableau Server Client was that I had a dashboard that had a lot of big data that needed to use an extract because it was not performant if it was live, and I had a pretty extensive ETL process that took in some different files from users and had to do some conforming on that data, and I just never knew when to schedule the extract refresh. Everyone always wanted the most up-to-date data, but obviously, like, I could not tell the future. I did not know when I would have those files and when things would be updated. So I started Googling things, and Tableau Server Client came up. So Tableau Server Client is a package that allows you to interact with your Tableau server in the same way that your user would, but in an automated way by using the Tableau REST API. So when I first used the Tableau Server Client package, there were more limitations. Now it's really great. I had to do some research on this myself, but you can actually create your own personal key that will give you the same exact access that your user has, and you'll be able to interact with Tableau Server Client in a way that you normally can. So if you have creator permissions to let's say a sales folder on your server, you'll still have creator permissions with the Tableau Server Client. If you do not have creator permissions, you will not magically have creator permissions using Tableau Server Client, but if you do, then you will be able to interact with it in the same way. So there's a lot of different things you can do with TSC. I'm just going to start calling it TSC because Tableau Server Client is a mouthful. But you can do things like get information on existing projects, workbooks, and user groups. You can publish workbooks and data sources. You can refresh data sources at a cadence that makes sense for your need, and not just the defaults on the server. So that is really what introduced me to Tableau Server Client, but then it kind of opened up this window of like, wow, there's all these other really cool things I can do using Python and Tableau together. So I'm probably not going to walk through all of these steps with you guys right now. If you don't have access to a Tableau server, this is probably not super useful, but we will send out the deck and you can definitely take a look at this. on your own time. But essentially, you can go into your account settings and generate a personal access token, which is what's going to give you that access to log into your server using TSC. So you just need to make sure that you name your token, and once you name it, you'll create your token secret, which is only going to be displayed one time. And so you need to make sure that you copy and paste it somewhere safe. If you accidentally delete it or you didn't save it, it's totally fine. You can create a new token, but you won't be able to see that token secret again. So the other tip I have for that is just to make sure that when you do create the token, you're ready to use it. It does expire, I think, 15 days from when you generate it by default, unless you use it. That's not to say you have to use it consistently after that, but at least using it once to try and log in. That way it does not delete itself. So tips for using your personal access token: store it somewhere safe that you have access to readily. It is, like I said, you can generate another one, but you just need to make sure that you're changing the token name as well as the access key secret wherever you're using it. So it's just helpful to have it stored somewhere safe. Again, like, that key is going to provide you the same access as your Tableau server account. If you have publishing rights to only one folder, using this key will just give you access to that folder. Next slide here. So I have some code here that you can use to sign into the server. I'm just going to walk you guys through what is necessary to sign in. So you can import Tableau server client. I always abbreviate it TSC, just makes things a little bit easier when you're referencing the package later. You need the token name, which we saw on the last couple of slides. So that's the name that you give your token. I would call it something that's easy to remember. And then the token value is that really long access key that you're going to get. Make sure that you have that in there. And then the site name is an optional parameter. This is going to be if you have multiple sites on your server. Some companies have like a dev and a prod site. Some companies have a different site for different departments. So this is going to be unique to you. You may not even have a site. I know that I've been at roles where there has only been one site, and in that case, you don't need to use it. It's an optional parameter, but there is a resource here that you can use to check out like how to figure out if you don't know what your site name is. It will be in the URL, so you can kind of figure out if you need to have that parameter in there. And then we have the server URL, so you can just have one string for tableau.carvana.com. And then to authenticate, we are going to need all of these things: token name, token value, and the site name. And then to have the server object, we will need that server URL. And then using the server version is just making sure that you're using the version of the Tableau REST API that your server is using so that they can communicate. And then you just sign in, server.auth.signin, and then using this variable tab auth. So it's pretty easy. All you need to do is generate that personal access token, and then fill in all these variables that are applicable to you. So this slide is really just to test it out. Essentially, all this is doing is going to log into your server and then look through all of the data sources, the metadata on those data sources, and it will print some information for you. So it's going to say how many data sources are on your site, and then what the names of those data sources are. Now, again, this is interacting with the server in the way that you normally would. So it's not going to tell you all of the data sources that your company has on their Tableau server unless you have access to every single folder on your Tableau server. So yeah, this is another one of those things. You guys can go over this on your own time with the slides and test it out yourselves. But this is a really simple way just to make sure that the authentication works and that you're getting what you expect. I know I had to test this out for myself, and I was not expecting some of the results that I got. And so just kind of checking around and Googling and going through resources and making sure that things like the site name are correct, are really helpful. So this is really what I've been talking about, what everyone's been talking about all evening, refreshing data sources. So what I have created here is just a little dynamic refresh process. Basically, this is if you want to schedule a lot of different extracts to refresh. What we talked about earlier was you have maybe 1 or 2 extracts that you want to schedule at the bottom of an ETL job. So you don't need a dynamic refresh process for that. You can explicitly say, hey, this is the name of my data source. This is what I want to refresh. But in this case, what we're doing is we're going to log into the server. We're going to look through all the data sources that have names that end in _refresh. So in this case, we will have published several data sources that end in _refresh. We're going to page through all the data sources and pull up only the ones that end in _refresh. So what is this doing? X = 0, we're setting a variable of X = 0 for the purposes of an index and a list. So what we're doing here is logging into the server. We are using one of those list comprehensions that Ty mentioned earlier. We're saying for all of the data sources this is how you can get that list of data sources from the Tableau server. So for all the data sources in here, we want the data source ID if the name ends in _refresh. So now we have a list of data source IDs that are what we want to refresh. So setting X = 0 means that when we're looping through those data sources, we'll be able to use X to represent the index of the item in the list so that we can kind of iterate through all of them and make sure all of the data sources get refreshed. So here is our loop. So we can call this whatever we want. Basically, we're just saying for each data source in the data source IDs, we want to do some stuff. And the stuff that we want to do is get the data source object from the server. So server.datasources.getById. And then from the data source IDs list, we're going to use the index of 0 to get the first data source ID. And then we're going to refresh it. It's literally that easy. And then you can just increment through. So X = X + 1 just means now X is set to equal 1. And then the next time the loop runs, we're going to be looking at the item at index 1, which is the second item in the list. So this will just continue until you've refreshed all of the data sources in your list, and that is it. So if you're not refreshing multiple extracts, this would be a lot simpler. You don't have to have a loop. You don't have to do any of this. You could just say, data source = server.datasources.getById. Maybe you already know the data source ID and you can just stick it in there. If you don't, you can do the same thing as like up here where we're getting the list of data sources. And then you can just say like, if the name equals whatever the name equals. So yeah, it's actually a lot easier than I thought it would be when I started getting involved with Tableau Server Client. And hopefully that makes you guys feel a little bit better if you're just getting started with Tableau Server Client. So there are actually a few different ways you can create a schedule for this. My recommendation is going to be based on what your environment and your situation looks like. So if you have access to a virtual machine and you're comfortable using Task Scheduler, you can certainly create a batch file, which is literally just like the path to your Python executable, which you can Google that if you need to figure out what that looks like for you, but it's going to look something like this. And then the path to your Python script. And then you just create a task in Task Scheduler, follow through sort of the prompts to make sure it's set up in the way that you want. And then you can just schedule that at the cadence that you like. The other way to do this is using Tableau Server Client, There's some schedule functions. This one, it might be based on your user's permissions. You may not be able to create an extract directly onto the server, but essentially when you normally schedule an extract, you get that drop down list of like, when do you want to schedule this? Every day at 6 a.m. or, you know, Tuesdays at 7. This would be your way of creating a more frequent extract refresh, or more specific if you only want it at 3:15 p.m. on Tuesdays and that's not an option. You can do that. This way, using the batch file to trigger the Python script, you can do things like have this stuck at the end of an ETL job. So you might have a Python script that's doing a bunch of stuff, that's conforming some data, pushing to a database, and then you want to refresh the extract. This would be the way to do that. This would be the way to ensure that you are capturing the most recent data, the most up-to-date data, and pushing that to your dashboard. Some other cool ways to use Tableau Server Client. These are just things that I have either encountered or kind of went through Google to see what other people were doing with it. But I know in a past life, I've had some requests for you know, very specific views of dashboards emailed to people. Certainly they can subscribe to things, but maybe that's not exactly how they want it displayed. Maybe they want a CSV. There are a lot of really cool things that you can do with TSC, like you can automate creating a CSV or a PDF with a specific view of a dashboard and then programmatically email it to the people who want to see it with Python. You can even have Tableau Server Client pull a specific image of the dashboard to go along with the file, make it real fancy, giving your users of the data the way that they want to see it. So yeah, we talked about creating the new schedule on the server. This one, if you're not sure if you have access to do this, you can test it out in Tableau Server Client. It will give you an error if you do not have the permissions. You can also verify with your Tableau Server Administrator if you aren't sure if this is okay to do. But you can also just use the batch file task scheduler process to trigger those extract refreshes as well. I know we talked briefly about the virtual machine, really just making sure that you're scheduling things on a computer that's always going to be running so that you don't have to worry about something just not working. If you schedule it on your personal computer, then you have to keep it on all the time, or you have to like consciously think about, you know, turning it on so that your tasks run. So that's not ideal. Another thing you can do with Tableau Server Client is you can see who is subscribed to your dashboards. You can see who's viewing your dashboards. I think this would be a really great way to get a better understanding of who's using what and why. And it can help you direct your consumers of the data to use other similar reports. It can give you a list of people who would need to be alerted if something was wrong with your dashboard. And yeah, I think it's just a really cool way to automatically see what's going on with your dashboards and how people can be using them better. Maybe you see that somebody who you expected to be using this one dashboard has never used it, and you can reach out to them and be like, hey, did you know that this exists? So a lot of really cool stuff that you can do. So I have a few resources here. I actually have the full script that I use to do the dynamic extract refresh here, so that you guys can use that as a template. Really great documentation on Tableau Server Client, which I think I already saw Michael posted in the chat. It's basically Tableau's GitHub. There's a lot of really good stuff. And then a good read on some more things you can do with TSC. So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation. I really appreciate you guys having me today. I do have one more slide here. Just wanted to let everyone know Carvana is hiring. So we're always looking for new and creative problem solvers on our analytics teams. We have a lot of openings right now, including on my team. So if you're interested or you want to learn more, please reach out. You can find our open positions on our careers page. I also have my email address and my LinkedIn. Please use me as a resource. It's COVID. It's hard to meet people. Just reaching out and saying like, hey, I'm a fellow data nerd. Like, what are you working on? Like, definitely hit me up. I am open to new connections and really excited to meet some of you guys. So yeah, I'd definitely like to open up to some questions.
Yeah, we got a couple questions in the chat and in the Q&A. I know Ty had responded to one, but so everyone can kind of hear the question and allow you an opportunity. Can you set up dynamic refreshing to refresh only data sources that you own?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever tried to refresh someone else's extract. I assume that it's going to be the same type of permission. So like, I'm pretty sure when you go into an extract that's not one that you own on the server, it won't let you refresh the extract. You can keep me honest on that, but I don't think that it's an option. Like if you try to refresh somebody else's extract when you're just directly in the server, I don't think that that's an option. So I would assume that that's not possible with Tableau Server Client.
So you can do it, but it depends on your permissions. So you as a user, depending on what your permissions are in Tableau, you get to see and interact with the data that you own. You won't be able to necessarily do or interact with someone else's data. However, if you're a site admin or a server admin, you have more capabilities, more permissions. You can certainly code in a user ID or a project or anything else and filter that down to criteria. But it will all come down to what permissions do you have, either at that token level or service account or however you're authenticating.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I know that when I go in to refresh someone else's extract, it doesn't allow me to. So I would. You
got to make nice with your server admin and have them bump up your permissions. You'll be good to go. We had another question again. I think Ty maybe had answered, but there was essentially, let's say you are in a multi-tenancy kind of situation where you've got maybe about 10 companies that you've got, you're doing some data filtering, and you want to publish content to 10 different sites. Now, can you use the Tableau server client to automate that on publishing to the 10 different sites?
If you have the permission to do that, I assume that you can. You would just need to authenticate through all of the sites separately.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of give my experience on this. Obviously, don't take my word for it. Test it. Go on the forums and check. But when I've done this, I think the challenge is to like burst or mass upload at the same time. The problem is your sessions, credentials, things like that. It doesn't behave well. So you can definitely do it sequentially. Log in, do your thing, log out, go to the next site, and do so forth. But simultaneously, the same thing you'll kind of see in Tableau. In Tableau Desktop, you can't be logged into multiple sites at once and do a publishing. In Tableau Prep, you can't be logged into multiple sites and publishing. In other applications like Alteryx, you can't be logged into multiple sites and publish to those. So I'm going to go on a limb and say I don't think it's possible to do it kind of in one stream. But maybe Ty or Tiffany, if, again, with the Python and maybe how you can code and store sessions maybe separately, and maybe it's possible.
Yeah, and you can iterate through the whole like authenticating, publishing, and then signing out, and then like have that whole chunk in a loop and iterate through all 10 sites. So you can, without having to explicitly write it 10 times, you should be able to loop through signing in, publishing, and then signing out. And I don't think there would be an issue there as long as there's no like delay. I think Python would wait for the authentication to actually like sign out on Tableau's side.
Right. And I think it's important, like you mentioned, to make sure that you do sign out and sign in respectively using other commands, whether it's tab command or APIs. I've had it where I didn't explicitly log out and things get confused at that point. So like you said, make sure you log in, log out respectively. And
in Python, you can use, Tiffany just went to the slide. You can use with, you can use it for like signing into things or opening files, or like anytime you make a connection with something. If you use with, once you've exited the with block, it closes the session or it signs out of whatever. So if you use with, it handles the sign out itself, so you don't have to do it explicitly. Great. It's a little convenience, so you don't forget.
All right, I've got a couple more questions. I guess for either of you, would you recommend data cleansing with Tableau Prep or Python, and how do you kind of factor that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. For me personally, I never got comfortable with Tableau Prep. I think when I first started using it, it wasn't handling the files that I was needing to clean super well, but this was years ago. So I've gotten really comfortable using Python for my data cleansing, but I know that the features of Tableau Prep have gotten a lot more robust. So I can't specifically speak to that. I think if you're not comfortable in Python and you want to take a stab at cleansing your data in Tableau Prep, it can probably do whatever you need. But also, as Ty showed, you might be able to do what you need to do in Python in just a few lines of code. So yeah, I don't know, Michael, you might have a better answer to that than me.
I'm kind of with you too, and also now just to understand that with Tableau you can actually call Python code and other code through the script command. So if you want to even blend the capabilities, have at it. I know, Matt, you do a ton of data prep, data cleansing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do most of my work on the database side if possible. So I'll just import the raw data into SQL Server, for instance, and that's usually for smaller ones. For bigger data sets, I'll use Tableau Desktop or Tableau Prep to profile the data ahead of time. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes I'm more just work in a IDE and look at tables, and sometimes I want a more visual approach to it. You really use all of them is the real answer there.
Great. While handling a large amount of data, if Tableau can't handle it, how do you deal with that? Anyone on the call?
Hi.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like for me personally, like I try not to put strain on Tableau whenever possible. I will build tables on the back end to do stuff that like Tableau can do, but I don't want it to have to do it. I would rather Tableau focus on more of the front end stuff. So I tend to just create the tables that I need and then either have it as a live data source or an extract. I don't think I've ever had a situation where like Tableau couldn't handle that. I don't know, like Ty, I know you've had issues with data size in Tableau before, but
yeah, I definitely have. And I mean, while it obviously removes some of the flexibility of Tableau, I tend to, if my data is absolutely gargantuan, I'll do some of the aggregation beforehand, which you lose some of the row level detail there. But yeah, I mean, and you can do all that aggregation in Python too. I mean, you can do it in SQL. It's probably easier to do it in SQL, honestly. But yeah, in general, I either pre-filter or pre-aggregate the data if it's too massive. Can only handle some.
And when creating extracts, so I mean, obviously extracts are going to be faster than direct connections for big data sets, but there is some overhead in creating those extracts. So you can utilize some of the strategies that I was talking about earlier, where maybe when you start, you just look at a month or a year of the data. And then once you've done something, you can start filtering in more data or reducing those filters so that you pull in more data. The other one is internet speed. So I went recently from a 50 megabit connection to a 1 gigabit connection, and just the time it took to create the extracts, because you're really just pulling in tons of data. In this case, it was from Snowflake. It probably increased my speed between 5 and 10 times just for the internet speed. I found that you rarely run into bottlenecks at the CPU and memory level when using Tableau, even with really big data sets. So I think the network's probably your biggest bottleneck in most cases there.
And then I think the last question, and then we'll get to the drawing. With the Tableau server clients, adding, removing users, is that possible?
Yes, it all boils down to permissions again, though. So like me, I'm a creator. I'm not a project manager on the server. I'm not a server administrator. So I can't do those things. But if you are a server administrator, you can use Tableau Server Client to create user groups or create users, move people around in user groups, things like that, to make your job a little easier.
Absolutely. And if, again, check out the Tableau Server Client. We put a whole bunch of links in there. Ty and Tiffany, you've got a ton of resources too. If you want to learn more, the Tableau Server Client is really just a nice packaged way to expose the REST APIs. If you really want to get familiar with that without understanding code, you can also go out and download Postman. Tableau's got a rich set of examples that you can already, how do I create a site? How do I create a project? How do I add users? How do I do any number of things that you probably have a question about? It'll give you the code that you kind of need to use. And then you could either write that out or use the samples out there. Tableau makes it easy. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like Ty said, Google it. You're probably going to get the answer. Trust me, you're not inventing anything new at this stage. All right.
So just quickly, Michael, for people that are dropping off, this will be on YouTube. This will be posted to Tableau's YouTube channel if you want to rewatch and you missed anything.
Absolutely. All right. So again, we're going to go ahead and do our drawing. So thanks to, I guess, everyone that submitted their names. We're going to go ahead and pick 2 winners. You do have to be present. So if you dropped off, So we're going to go ahead and pick first name. If you're present, please let us know in the chat. All right, Robbie, are you with us? Do we have Robbie? Matt, do we have Robbie? I'm looking at the chat.
Look at the participant list. I don't see Robbie still on.
Uh-oh.
I think he might have forgotten that we were doing the drawing at the end. So we'll whoever wins, we will chat. I'll send a direct chat to you, and you can just send me your email address, and we will get you the link for the voucher. So let's see who's going to be the winner. Brian Elskin, is that right?
Oh, well, we're going up again.
Still spinning. Sorry about that, Brian. Andre, it looks like you are on. Andre Gunawan, please confirm. All right.
Are we on? We got a winner?
Yep.
All
Andre
right.
is there,
Congratulations.
I'm just going to send him a direct message right now and get his email address.
Perfect.
Andre, you can just drop that in if you don't care about sharing your email address with everybody.
All right. Last one. So we got one more voucher to give away. Good luck to everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Andre. Got your email address there.
Harsh, are you still with us?
Looks like it.
Got them? All right. Good deal.
All right. Yeah, Harsh, just drop your email address in there, or let me know if you want me to contact you directly about that.
All right. So I want to thank Ty, Tiffany, much appreciated. Again, Matt, it's been amazing teaming up again this month. Please visit us, our respective user groups. And if you're not in Phoenix, no worries, sign up. We're all virtual. Love to have you. Anything to add, Matt, Tiffany, Ty?
Nope, just give me 1 second to grab Harsh's email address. He just pasted in there, and then we should be good to go. Everyone, thank you so much for attending, and thanks, Ty and Tiffany. That was a really, really great presentation about Python. And thanks, Michael, as always. It's always great working with such a great professional. You do such a great job running these meetings. I appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it. Everyone, do sign up for other user groups. We've got industry-specific user groups, virtual user groups all over the world. Check it out. Go to usergroups.tableau.com and engage. We'll see you again next month. If there are any questions, we'll let you go. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.